Hello, and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Tianyu. Coming up in this edition, the body of Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh arrived Thursday in the Qatari capital of Doha from Iran and will be buried Friday. The West and Russia have come to a deal, completing the biggest prisoner swap since the end of the Cold War. China will strive to ensure its network of free trade areas contribute to about 40% of total foreign trade by 2030. We begin in the Middle East. The body of assassinated Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh has arrived in Qatar for burial. A CNN report cited sources saying the Hamas chief was killed by a bomb planted at a guest house in Tehran months before. Hamas members, including former group leader Khalid Mashal, were seen standing on the tarmac at Doha International Airport on Thursday, waiting to receive the coffin. Hamas and Iran have accused Israel of carrying out the killing, but the Jewish state made no claim of responsibility and said it would make no comment on the killing. Hassan Kavani has more from Tehran, where a funeral ceremony for Haniyeh was held on Thursday.
Thousands of people took to the streets in the Iranian capital Tehran on Thursday to condemn the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. The head of the Hamas political bureau had traveled to Tehran to attend the inauguration ceremony of Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. He was assassinated in a private hotel in northern Tehran hours after leaving the Iranian parliament. The funeral ceremony started in downtown Tehran after Ayatollah Khamenei led prayers for Haniyeh and his security guard, who was also killed in the attack. People in Tehran are attending the funeral ceremony for Ismail Haniyeh, a popular Hamas leader in Iran. These angry mourners are calling for revenge and ask the government to make Israel regretful.
It's absolutely wrong. They assassinated our dear guest in our own country.
I demand the most severe and crushing response to this attack, a response that will prevent them from violating our territory again.
Israel martyred our guest in our house. Israel should definitely expect a new operation from Iran.
Hours after the assassination, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned in an official statement that avenging Haniyeh's death is Tehran's duty as the incident took place on Iranian soil. As the country's commander-in-chief, Khamenei said Israel would receive a severe punishment. While a number of countries have strongly condemned the violation of Iranian airspace and blamed Israel for an act of terror, there are serious concerns that ceasefire negotiations to end Israel's war in Gaza are more fragile than ever. The world's eyes are closely monitoring events in Palestine and the wider region as tensions also escalate between Israel and Lebanese group Hezbollah and fears mount over Iran's expected retaliation. Analysts believe the next steps taken by various resistance groups across the Middle East could play a crucial role in determining not only the future of Palestine but the region as a whole.
That was Hassan Kavani in Iran. In the aftermath of Ismail Haniyeh's assassination, Palestinians are voicing their concerns about the impact on leadership and ceasefire negotiations.
It's an irreparable loss. There will not be a humble leader like Ismail Haniyeh. Secondly, I believe his killing will have a strong impact on the negotiations. We hope that there will be a strong response to his assassination, whether from Iran, Hezbollah, or even from Gaza.
The Palestinian issue is always a birth of new leaders. Whether Ismail Haniyeh or someone else was killed, during the past years they've assassinated many leaders in most of the resistance movements, not just Hamas, and despite that, new leaders were born. This is the characteristic of the Palestinian cause and the characteristic of the people of Gaza who live with that.
Meantime, families of Israeli hostages and their supporters have gathered in Tel Aviv to mark 300 days since the October 7th attack on southern Israel. People are also expressing concerns on what will happen next after the killing of Ismail Haniyeh.
300 days is a lot of time. So we are here today. We're going to march around the Kiryah to ask the people of Israel and the government to sign the deal. Please seal the deal and let's finish it. We'll hope it will help. We hope it's going to finish and really quick. We know that we had the kill of Haniyeh, so we don't know if it's going to affect. If it's not, we don't know anything. We just hope that it will be end soon because we are tired.
The question is what will happen after that. I don't see what is the plan of the Prime Minister. So that's what frightened me.
Israel and Hamas have traded blame for delays in reaching a ceasefire deal. Since the October 7th attack, Israeli forces have killed more than 39,000 Palestinians. The West and Russia have completed their biggest prisoner swap since the end of the Cold War. 26 people from 7 countries have been released in a far-reaching deal between Russia and the West, including the US, Germany, and Poland. Turkey's intelligence agency coordinated Thursday's prisoner exchange operation from Ankara. The freed American prisoners from Russia have landed at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were at the scene to greet them. Biden called the prisoner swap deal a feat of diplomacy. The freed prisoners include 3 American citizens and 1 American green card holder. Meantime, Russia says many nationals detained and imprisoned in NATO countries have returned home. Russian President Vladimir Putin was at the airport to meet them. Dasha Chernyshova reports from Moscow.
Well, indeed, a very important moment for the Russians who have been kept in the prisons in the West and for the Westerners who have been imprisoned in Russia. This biggest prisoner swap deal has now finally taken place after days of hints that we have seen. And the understanding now is that this deal is showing that there is a possibility of negotiations between Russia, Belarus, and the Western countries. Russia has also said it was a very important moment. We have seen the Russian president himself meeting the Russian prisoners who have returned on the Russian state plane from the Western countries. They have been returned home to the Russian capital. They were all met by the Russian president himself as he traveled to the Vnukovo airport. There are 10 Russians, 2 of them are minors, and 8 are the Russians who have been working in various spheres. Some of the sources here in Russia say even though those Russians have been accused in the West, for instance, of espionage or of cyber crimes, their guilt has never been proven, and some of them, according to the sources, have not pleaded guilty. So the understanding now is that the future of these people will have to be discussed. All these people will have to go through the medical examination first. We also hearing that Roman Seleznyov, who was transferred from the US and who was sentenced to 27 years in prison in the US for cyber crimes, his relatives are saying that his health is very poor. But at the same time, what has to be understood here is that there are more Russians who are kept in prisons overseas, and the Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, has reminded of that, saying that the work on future prisoner swaps will continue. So certainly there is a lot more that will have to be done even after this historic deal is taking place. And certainly we are all expecting to hear from the Russian authorities as to how they will be helping the 10 prisoners who have just returned back home.
That was Dasha Chernyshova on the biggest prisoner exchange between the West and Russia in recent memory. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has welcomed Germans and Russians freed in the prisoner swap and says he has no doubt Germany has made the right decision.
I was able to talk at length with those who have arrived here and have now been released from captivity in Russia. It was very moving. Many did not expect this to happen now and are still very full of the feelings associated with suddenly being able to be free after all.
Germany is receiving 12 detainees. These include 5 who hold German nationality, including some dual nationals. In South America, the Amazon is facing a severe drought, with many of its rivers already at critically low levels. A significant factor is the increasing number of forest fires. In the past 7 months, the region has witnessed the highest incidence of fires in nearly 2 decades, with the figure approaching 25,000. These fires are mostly man-made and used to manage pasture and clear a deforested area. Meanwhile, Brazil's Environment Minister Marina Silva has also highlighted other factors contributing to the worsening situation.
We are living under the effects of climate change, and this increases the potential of natural phenomena such as El Niño and La Nina, which have not even had a break this year. We had an anticipation of more than 2 months of something that was supposed to start in August and started in May.
The driest months are normally in August and September when fire and deforestation peak. So far, the most affected countries are Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil. On Monday, Brazil's Federal Water Agency decreed a water shortage situation in 2 major basins, Madeira and Peru's, which together cover an area nearly the size of Mexico. The Amazon holds 1/5 of the world's fresh water. In Asia, China is aiming to ensure its network of free trade areas can contribute about 40% of the total foreign trade by 2030. The Ministry of Commerce says China will further expand the networks of FTAs to cover more countries and regions. You Yang has more on the development of China's foreign trade in the first half of the year and efforts to boost trade, consumption, and business operation in the future.
The Chinese Commerce Ministry said in the first half of this year, the total trade volume of imports and exports of goods reached over 21 trillion yuan, or over $2.9 trillion, a year-on-year increase of 6.1%. It's a historic high, and Chinese authorities say this means the quality and quantity of China's foreign trade have remained stable. And meanwhile, during the same period, the import and export of service trade reached 3.6 trillion yuan, or about $500 billion, an increase of 14% year-on-year. The contribution rates of goods and services import and export to economic growth reached 13.9%. The ministry said China's cross-border e-commerce exports continue to maintain rapid growth in the first half of this year, with the exports of products such as ships and automobiles growing rapidly. On the other hand, the ministry would also keep promoting high-quality business development in 4 key areas. Those include the boosting people's consumption and at the same time organizing major exhibitions such as China International Import-Expo and China International Fair for trade in services and more. This followed by making greater efforts to attract and utilize foreign investment, optimize the foreign investment environment, at the same time establish a roundtable meeting system for foreign-funded enterprises. The ministry will also promote international economic and trade cooperation. And that means, for example, deeply participating in the reform of the World Trade Organization, promoting the full implementation of RCEP, and advancing the accession to comprehensive, progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, and as well as the Digital Economic Partnership Agreement. Well, they also said they will also pushing forward the high-quality development with the partner countries under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative.
That was You Yang reporting. Meanwhile, imports and exports have accelerated in the Guangdong Free Trade Zone, and that spurred a growth in the Chinese cold chain sector. Improvements in logistics and better customs clearance procedures contributed to the growth. Guo Yan has more.
Are you a big fan of durians? China has emerged as the world's largest consumer of this tropical fruit. To uncover the reasons behind the growing demand of durians, I visited Nansha Port, the largest durian importing port on the Chinese mainland, located in the Guangdong Free Trade Zone. In 2022, the value of imported cold chain goods at Nansha Port reached nearly 23 billion yuan, or over $3 billion, increasing 80% from a year ago. By 2023, Nansha Port had become the largest importer of cherries and durians in the Chinese mainland. For these perishable agricultural products, speed is vital. Hu Zhengjun is the business manager at the Guangzhou Nansha International Cold Chain Corporation.
For imported fresh fruits, we have rapid custom clearance channels, including pre-approval for certificates, advanced declarations for imported container cargo at customs, and direct pickups at the dock. Then the products from Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and so on are distributed to cities in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area within 1 hour, and other parts of the country within 24 hours.
Nansha Port in Guangzhou has developed into the country's largest by sea for the import of cherries, durians, and rubber wood. From a lesser-known port into a key hub in the Pearl River Delta, the growth of foreign trade here reflects the broader progress made by the free trade zone.
To help businesses thrive and boost foreign trade, it's crucial to create a favorable business environment, drive institutional improvements, and align with high international standards. The development of cold chain logistics is a prime example of this approach. Port authorities and customs are working on ways to enhance inspection efficiency.
In the first half of the year, the import and export volume of the free trade zone reached $46 billion, increasing nearly 30% from a year ago. Trade official Zhang Jinsong says the area has become a crucial driver for the entire province.
Actual foreign investment amounted to $1.96 billion. Despite occupying less than 0.1% of the province's land area, the Guangdong Free Trade Zone has contributed 7.6% of the province's foreign trade of imports and exports, and 1/4 of its actual foreign investment.
The Guangdong Free Trade Zone was inaugurated in 2015, covering the Nansha New Area in Guangzhou, Qianhai Shekou Area in Shenzhen, and Hengqin New Area in Zhuhai. Over the past 9 years, the value of foreign trade in the Guangdong Free Trade Zone has grown from nearly $14 billion in 2015 to $80 billion in 2023, with an average annual growth rate of 24%.
That was Guo Yin reporting. Now recapping today's headlines. The body of Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh arrived Thursday in the Qatari capital of Doha from Iran and will be buried Friday. The West and Russia have come to a deal, completing the biggest prisoner swap since the end of the Cold War. China will strive to ensure its network of free trade areas contribute to about 40% of total foreign trade by 2030. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Tian Yu. Thank you for listening.